Collin, I tell you, I'm so excited that you came up here today.
Bobby, thank you, man. I was blown away when I got the email that you wanted me up here. I was like, man, this is cool. Don't get to do stuff like this that often, and this show is the show.
Well, I
you were the
appreciate
man.
it.
So thank you so much for having me.
Just first of all, let me just geek. I think all of us will geek out for a second and go. We were just we grew up in the '90s. I was a teen, and we're just massive fans of you and your music. And when we hear these songs, it reminds us of what we were doing when we were 12 or 13 or 14 years old, right? When we're
Totally.
we're all big fans. Like the whole universally, we're all a big fan.
Thank you, guys. And that's the thing about music. I mean, because I wouldn't have ever wanted to do this had I not been a fan of it. And I loved the music that I grew up on, and the greats of country music, and rock and roll and stuff. But you still, when it's beginning and you have that first hit or two on the radio, you still don't think that that's ever going to happen to you yourself, to where somebody might 20, 30 years down the road would have that kind of a feeling and heart, to give them a warm and fuzzy, so to speak, because of something that I was a part of, So that's I get to experience that all the time now, which is cool.
Well, I was looking through. I was having a Collin Raye night at the house, and I was just playing a bunch of songs, and like my jam was Little Rock, and I was like, let me see, it's got to be his number 1 or number 2 most, and I couldn't believe it was like number 5 on the stream. Little Rock to me is the definition of a Collin Raye song. Now,
thank you.
When I ask you though, what is the song that most people know you for? Is it not Little Rock?
That would be probably third.
Wow.
Yeah, I think "Love Me" was the first one, and that's that one everybody knows. Everybody knows that one, and "That's My Story" would be the other one. Because it's funny about "That's My Story" is it's like I played worldwide, internationally. It would be "That's My Story" because they go, I played in places in Europe, different places, Singapore, and they're going. Collin Raye. You go into "That's My Story," and even if it's not an English-speaking country, they all know the chorus.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe Little Rock though, because I'm from Arkansas.
Well, and I think am I, and that's my personal favorite of all the hits would be Little Rock, because I just think it's just such a incredibly written song. One of the first country songs of the '90s that had that kind of a social message to it, but was able to be a hit, because prior to that, it was tough to get a song that said something that deep to shoot up the chart, And so when that did, I felt like we kind of broke some ground. And so to me, that one will always be my favorite. And because it's such a well-constructed song, and it's so picturesque and so vivid, it's still my favorite one to sing too, because I always feel like I'm singing it for the first time.
Just the details, because there's no like washing it. It's like the Church of Christ, the preacher, selling VCRs at Walmart. Like it is, you're very much in the exact place of this guy.
Yeah.
So that's 1994. Little Rock came out. So you'd had a few hits by then. When that song starts to first picked as a single, and did you feel like there was a real shot with that thing early, or did it take a minute to burn?
Well, Paul Worley and I found the song. Tom Douglas, of course, wrote it. Who that was his first cut as a writer. And of course, he went on to write so many great songs for Martina and
House to Build Me from Miranda.
Tim McGraw for Miranda. I mean, it's just great writer, one of the best we have. And so I'm thankful that we got to cut his first one, And honestly, because of the hits that I'd had leading up to that, they had either been kind of rockers or straight up love songs. And so I was a little leery. I loved it, and I thought I'm so proud of this record, but I thought, can we really make this a hit? So I was a little apprehensive about it, but I believed we had a good team over at Epic and good radio team. And I thought, if you guys are into this, then I'm into it. And the rest is history.
I'm always curious too about how songs find people, because the Tom Douglas, he's one of the writers of this song, and the story, because I know Tom a little bit. The story is that he had moved to Nashville, failed, moved to Texas, was selling real estate, but he was living with his dad, and they'd never had a super close relationship. But he came home, and his dad had this one song that he loved, and it was Little Rock. And Tom Douglas was like, wow. And that's what got him back into Nashville writing more songs again. Was your hit with Little Rock?
Well, I knew part of that story. I didn't know the part about his dad. He never told me that, but I knew that song had got, okay, I guess I can do this. And it's like, yes, sir, you can.
And that was
you're very good at this. So
and
please.
then you just kill it, because a song can be well written, but if you don't perform it and deliver it, it isn't. It's just a greatly written.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Well, I've always my theory was always I'm not smart enough to try to to act anything. It's kind of like, look, if it's a song I'm into and I love what it says, then I feel like I can deliver it well. If it's something that and I've passed on hits that are songs that went on to be hits for other people just because it didn't. I thought, I just don't think I'm the guy to do that, you know. And then somebody else would have a hit on it, and they say, well, don't you wish you had that back? And I go, well, no, not really, because they needed that song. They were the person who was supposed to sing that, you know. But Little Rock was one that I just felt so close to the minute we heard it. And the original demo was just Tom playing on like an old out of tune Baldwin piano, singing into a cassette recorder. So it was not good quality at all. But there was like 14 songs on it. Love Remains was another one that was on there. But I think Little Rock was like number 8. And we heard that and we looked at it, it's like, wow. Did that just do something to you, you know? And so, like I said, the rest is history. And Tom has done quite well since then.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go back to the beginning, 1991, Love Me. I mean, I did finally succumb to the pressure of the room to go Love Me is probably in my mind as big as Little Rock. Because I was like, there's no song that should be ranked above. But so this song, like, tell me, was this the first single you put out or the first hit you had?
Well, the first single was All I Can Be Is a Sweet Memory, which God bless him, Vince Gill sang harmony with me on, which really helped that break that loose. And that went to like number 22 on the chart. But the video went number 1. So it was like, okay, well, that wasn't technically what you'd call a big hit, but it did get to 22 and the video went number 1. So we're on to something here, you know? And then Love Me was the second single, and it flew up the chart. And again, for a kid, I was 30, but when that was happening, I couldn't believe it because the other song had been such a struggle. You know, it'd be like, okay, we're at 96, or the next week, okay, we still got our bullet, we're at 95 now. You know, and you think this is going to be how it's always going to be, you know. And then Love Me came out and it was jumping like 12 spots, 15 spots, you know, 8, 12. And I mean, it was a kind of a giddy feeling because I had the radio on constantly, you know, and it was just getting played every 30 minutes, it seemed like, you know. So that's the one that I guess will always be my you know, calling card, so to speak, I guess.
You ever flip stations and you're on one station and you flip the other one in the town and you're like, I'm on both stations at the same time?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Back in the day it happened, you know, because I lived in the Dallas area at the time, and you had a big station in Fort Worth, you had K-Plex in Dallas, and then there was one other in Young Country. And so I had them on, I was just one after another going back and forth. So
you weren't here when that was?
No, I was living in Texas.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And so were people like, hey, Collin, you gotta get to Nashville if you're gonna.
Well, it was weird because I had been divorced, and my ex-wife and my kids were living in Greenville, Texas. And so, and prior to getting my record deal, I was working out in Reno, working casinos and stuff, and I couldn't afford to leave because we were making really good money for you know, for the level we were at. It was making good money, and I thought, well, I can't afford to leave here because I was taking care of them and whatnot. And so when the record deal happened and Love Me happened, I thought, okay, I can afford now to leave here and go be where they are.
Nice.
So I wound up moving there and spent pretty much all the 90s. I didn't move to Nashville until I think 99.
This Fruit of the Loom song, because I remember it, Collin. This commercial here, it was from a Fruit of the Loom underwear commercial. It's from 2005. I'm going to play a little clip of this here. Here you go. Overlove your underwear. How in the world did they approach you? How do you audition for that? Do you go or do they go?
No, the producer Chris Farron was a friend of mine. You know, had the end to Fruit of the Loom at that time, and he had found this song, or I think wait a minute, I'm sorry, he co-wrote this song for the jingle, and Fruit of the Loom thought it was great for the kind of the commercial they were going for, and it was going to be a Super Bowl commercial, and so he, bless his heart, he thought, well, I need somebody. This song is really tongue in cheek. It's about being in love with your underwear. But it needs to sound really dramatic. Now, who can I get that will get it? You know. And so I went down to the studio and he played the song for me. And I was cracking up, you know. And I said, "Are you sure you want me to do?" He goes, "Oh yeah, just sing it like it's Little Rock. Just pour your heart out into it." And so I did it, you know, thinking, well, if it's going to be on the Super Bowl, this can't be a bad thing, right? And it became, man, people talked about that for years and years and years. And it was a nice check I would get every so often too.
Just residuals that kept coming in from it?
Yeah, I mean, you'd by the time he's, I sure could use a little extra money. I mean, we had, if it was a down year or whatever, all of a sudden there'd be a $2,500 check in the mail from Fruit of the, so
yeah.
So it was a cool deal. I mean, I wish I could do about one of those a year.
Yeah, right. All right, Collin Raye is here. We're kind of rolling through some of the catalog here. So let's go 1992. Like when I bring up In This Life, what's that make you think about?
Man, I Mike Reed makes me think of Mike Reed, the writer who was Mike's story. He was a football player, played for the Cincinnati Bengals, all-pro defensive tackle, but a concert pianist too, which is such an odd pairing. And when he retired from football, he wanted to come down here and write country songs. And he and I think Alan Shamblin wrote In This Life. And so Garth Fundus actually produced that album on me, the second album. And we were ready to go. We had I forget how many, 12 songs or whatever we were going to do. We had them ready to go, and but we didn't have that one. And the night before we actually was going to track the next day, somebody from that publishing company brought the song over, and it was Mike singing it, and he's a great singer. And we thought, man, there's our first single off this album, if we can hook it tomorrow, And so it was a very like a last minute thing that came our way. And I loved it because it was a love song, which at that time Sony was really trying to push me as sort of about, a love song guy, and I liked it because it could be about anybody. It could be it could be about anyone in your life, a child, one of your children, a parent, anything. It was just a kind of a universal kind of message about just loving somebody that much and being loved by that person so much. So I thought this has got to be a winner.
So before you play this, I guess listening to you talk about how they were kind of personifying you, did they ever go, hey, we love slow songs aren't going to work on the radio back then?
Oh, yeah. See, and I was more concerned about it than they were, actually, because that's why jumping the next single, I think it was the next single after In This Life, was a song called I Want You Bad and That Ain't Good, which was this rocker thing. And I pushed for that because I said, guys, I don't want to be Perry Como. I don't want you. Because my live show I was chasing Garth. I was trying to do that, but I was having to do a bunch of covers to keep my show that exciting because so many of the hits were ballads, and so I was working. So I think they were comfortable in just letting me be that for a while, and then I just sort of forced the issue over the next few albums and said, no, man, I want a long career. I want this to last a while, and we can't just keep giving them. Can't keep giving radio ballads time after time,
Well, how about we give them a ballad right now? All right.
But I'm glad for the ones I had.
Do you feel like a reappreciation of your songs, like that maybe fell off for a bit, but now it's just back full force?
Yeah, and again, that's something, and a lot of my friends from the 90s, my compatriots, that were out at the same time, basically. We all talk about it all the time whenever I see this. It's kind of cool that, and you just didn't expect that. I almost kind of feel like 90s country is kind of the new classic rock, and by that I mean I grew up on the classic rock and roll of the 70s and stuff, and it had such a resurgence, say, in the 90s, where you wanted to hear Grand Funk, you wanted to hear Foghat, you wanted to hear Seeger, and their touring just exploded, and I've making more money on the road than they did back in the day because people wanted to relive that music so much. And I think 90s country was so big, and I give Garth so much credit for that because he busted down a lot of walls and made that narrow 2-lane road into this big superhighway. And I think it touched the music we did back then touched so many people. Now they are at that age where they want to relive it, And
they have a little more money because they have careers and they can spend the tickets on the money,
And the touring is big,
yeah.
Well, up until this,
yeah, right.
all this nonsense. But prior to that, I mean, it was amazing. And I would see young people, very young people, 20 years old, 24 years old, 17 years old girls singing along to these songs, and they go, wow, well, that means their parents raised them listening to it.
I was talking to Tracy Lawrence pretty recently. He said the same thing about classic rock. Exact same analogy. Mm-hmm. He was like, it feels like it's classic rock. Mm-hmm. So we got to the point we wanted to hear the old CCR stuff.
Exactly.
And so he's like, people like that with music. Pay me a Birmingham.
Because I think that music for my generation, Tracy's generation, that music was the biggest thing there was. The rock and roll of that time, and pop / rock and roll of that time, was the biggest thing in the world, and so it had the biggest impact on us. As far as on a lot of people. Because even country music. I mean, I grew up on Merle Haggard and Buck Owens and Cash and Waylon and Johnny Horton and Jim Reeves, but it was always kind of a exclusive kind of club. Because I remember being in high school, even in the South, in middle school and high school and stuff. And if you like country music, like, really? They just didn't get it. They didn't. A lot of kids just didn't understand why we liked it, But rock and roll, everybody liked it. And so I think it had that more of a universal impact. And I agree with Tracy. I feel like now is our time. It's like 90s country was that big.
Well, One Boy, One Girl. Where do you put that in your set when you play it? Because that's such a smash too.
Oh man, usually in the middle, and that may be one of the most requested songs we get, because sometimes I'll not do that one, or I'll not plan to do that one.
If I go to a Collin Raye show and you don't play One Boy, One Girl, you're going to find me getting a refund real quick.
You know what? I have heard that. And because there's certain ones that you just know you always need to do, and then others I try to switch out, because we had quite a few, and you think, well, and there's new stuff you want to do and stuff, and it's very hard for me to sometimes. A lot of artists, I think, go through this. You think, well, I want to play this because this means a lot to me. But then I'll go see someone else, and I do the same thing. If they don't play 2 or 3 of the ones, I get a little mad about it. I can't believe they didn't do this. So then I have to remember, no, they're saying the same thing about me if I leave certain songs out. So now I'm doing it all the time.
So you got a new album that's coming out called Scars. The whole album's not out. It's going to be out in October, right?
Yeah.
Now, did you record this in the last few months? Or was this? Yeah.
We actually were wrapping it up when the whole Corona thing started, and so I'm lucky we got it in there when we did. And a guy named David Ferguson, Fergie, produced this. He's a very acclaimed producer, and the record label's Audium, and they kind of wanted an Americana kind of record, and so I thought, okay, well, cool. I'm still not sure what the definition of that is. There kind of is no definition. It is the way I took it. It's like, well, this can be as edgy, a little bit dark, a little bit happy. It can be a little bit folky. It can be whatever you want it to be, and that seems to be what they wanted. And so it was a really fun record to make. And I wrote every song on it, wrote or co-wrote every song on it except for a couple that my brother wrote. And he's played with Miranda Lambert since she began. He introduced me to Miranda when she was 17 years old, and so I've known her a long time. And he was sort of her only band when she was playing around Dallas and Austin and stuff, and playing the little acoustic things and stuff. And he always believed in her, of course, as did I. Had no idea it was going to go where it went, But she's just awesome, and he's played with her up until recently. He's had some health issues with his heart and whatnot. He had a really bad year last year, and he's probably done touring at this point. And so anyway, this record was kind of a full circle moment for us, because he and I started this together when we were 15, 16 years old. And we got separated and went different ways. We were very, very different in a lot of ways. Things we wanted to do and whatnot. But we've always been close. But it was so cool to get to work with him on this record. He plays on it, he sings on it, and the title song, "Scars," that Miranda sings with me on, Scotty wrote that like 20 years ago, and wow. I've been holding on to that song for the right time.
I'm gonna play some of that right now. Let's listen to some "Scars" here from Collin Raye.
And bless you for that.
But the pain that I remember is the pain that makes me stronger. I've had to look at life that way.
It's gotta be pretty cool that Miranda is gonna sing with you too, right? I mean, we're hearing you guys sing right there. That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, and she'd been threatening to do it for a while, and I was like, yeah, and so. Because again, we've known each other a really, really long time, and in her early days, I would do things where I'd show up and play on a bill that she was on and whatnot, which she appreciated that when she was just getting started. And I guess this was her little favor to me and to Scotty to get to do this. And of course, she killed it. She's a great singer in the studio, and went in there. She knew the song too because she had done it. Had played it live before over the last few years. Whenever they would do like an acoustic thing where it was just her and Scotty and maybe Riders in the Round kind of thing, she would always do "Scars" and just sang the pain off of it, And so Scotty was hoping she'd cut it. And then she's, well, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. And so I said, well, heck, if she's not going to do it, then I'm cutting it, you know. And then to bring her in on it. So obviously she knew the song so well. She wasn't in the studio 15 minutes and just killed it, you know. And it really kind of anointed this record having her on there.
All right, the full album out in October. Well, thing number one is we're all such big fans. This has been such a joy for me personally.
Thank you.
You know, I get to be a bit jaded because I get to do a lot of cool things now in my job, but occasionally something resets me. It's like, this is what makes me happy, and this whole thing made me happy today.
Thank you. So that means a lot to me, and just again, thank you for having me come in. It's an honor. Big fan, and just love the show, and you're on a roll, and it's really cool to get to be a part of it.
My final question, I saved this for the very end. Do you remember our great Twitter feud of 2014?
Yes. I knew you were going to bring that up. Can I explain that?
Go ahead, I'm ready.
Okay, because I wrote a book.
Yeah.
Okay, it was my life story, and the management team I had at the time, the story was basically about my life story. I had a lot of tragedy in my life over the years and whatnot, family stuff, and it was more about my faith journey and the family situation, but yet there was some music business stuff in it, and because I knew, well, if it's a Collin Raye autobiography, they're going to want to hear some stuff about the music stories too. So we had some anecdotes and different stories in there. But my manager at the time was really looking for a hook that he could, for PR hook, you know. And so I'd made some comments about the modern country music of the time, and we got seriously taken out of context, and he forced it. And so he was the one trying to push that, and I was like, I didn't mean that. So he kept trying to draw me into this thing because he thought it'd sell, you know. And I've never been a big fan of that, you know. And so real quick story, but I love Travis Tritt, love him. He's one of my favorite artists of the '90s. And there was a comment in there. I was talking about certain records in the '90s that I thought were just rocking. They were just like moments where you just, you know, think that's really good. That's really good. And I always loved his cover of Trouble, the Elvis song, because he slayed it. You know, the band, it was just a really great cover. And so I mentioned that in the book. Okay, well, just so you know, the way you write these books generally, none of us are authors where we sit down at a typewriter. I basically sat in front of a video camera an hour a night for like 3 months and just would tell my story. And then a ghostwriter, I guess if you want to call him that, would try to put it into manuscript, you know. And so there were a lot of things that he wrote differently than what I said. So I would go back and try to edit. I said, hey, I didn't say that. I didn't say it's going to be taken the wrong way. So anyway, I fought with the publisher throughout the whole process. I'll never write another book again as long as I live. And so, but one of the things he said in there, he talks about my comment about the Trouble, and he kind of made it sound like I was dissing the song. And I was like, that's not what I said. And so, and I thought, and I would say, take that out. And final manuscript comes out, it's in there. So I thought, well, I hope Travis doesn't read this book because he'll take it the wrong way. So we're at the Randy Travis tribute they had a couple years back at Bridgestone, you know. And I'm back there, and Travis hadn't seen him in a while. He comes up to me, oh, Collin, I read your book. I got this look of panic on my face. I was like, oh, hey, man. He goes, oh, I loved it. I guess he didn't take it as wrong, but I was afraid of that. I thought, because I love that record, it sounded like I was, well, like not like didn't dig that song. You know, but no, he took it really well, but I'll never forget that. I just broke out into a cold sweat, you know, and he goes, yeah, I read your book. I was like, oh no.
Well,
anyway, but I didn't want to, my manager was going, Bobby wants to do this. And I was like, oh, because I don't want to be known for a guy that's dissing the guys that are out there now. And that's what he was trying to get me to be. And I was like, I'm not comfortable with that. So thank you for thank you for putting up with that.
I saved it for the very end in case it got awkward. We were going to do a fist fight or something.
Yeah.
We got all the songs and then the fist fight. But
no, I think I said something about the lyric. I felt like the lyrics were a lot of them were kind of the same story, same message, dirt road, etc. And I made some kind of comment about that, and boy, he just ran with it. He said, this is good. I was like, that's not what I meant.
Did you, when you were coming up, were there ever folks that were like, Collin Raye, that's not country?
Oh yeah, I used to get that all the time, and you know, I remember, you know, Chestnut came out to radio about the same time I did. Diffie, God rest his soul, and you had some really good country voices that were out at that time, and because I sounded a little more, you know, Don Henley-ish kind of, people were like, well, he's really a rocker, and he's just down here, you know. And if they only knew, you know, I mean, I with this guitar right now, if you had about 6 days, I could sit here and sing classic country songs and not miss a word and never repeat the same song. But because that was my specialty, so to speak, and my early producer said, no, this is your thing. You don't need to be doing Too Cold at Home. You need to be doing this. It's going to make you stick out. It's going to make you sound different than everybody else. There was a lot of people that thought, I just don't know if he's really country or not, you know. So I get that. I mean, I've been on the receiving side of that, where you know, it kind of hurts your feelings a little bit. You go, yeah, I am, man, because I would sit there and name, you know, Glenn Campbell, Ray Price, who sometimes sounded as country as cornbread, other times he sounded like a pop singer. You know, there's many of the Jim Reeves. There's many of the greats that we all admire and idolize that didn't all sound like Merle. You know, that's just one style. That Merle's is just, and Merle's still the king of that. But that Lefty Frizzell kind of thing, that there's more than just that one style of country music. You know, Hank didn't sing like that. You know, but I think there was a time where if you didn't do that, oh, he's not country.
Right.
You know, so I get. That's why I didn't want to get into that whole thing, because, like, man, I'm not knocking what this is a whole different generation. It's a whole different time. Times change. Music changes. And everybody's doing their thing, and they're successful because they're doing their thing really well. And so anyway, but I'm sorry you remember that.
All right, listen,
I was hoping you'd forgotten.
We've had a great time. Colin's been great seeing you.
Thank you, Bobby.
I speak for everybody in the room. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
I do.
Thank you guys so much. It was a great pleasure.
You can follow Collin on Instagram, Collin Raye Official, and on Twitter @Collin Raye. Thank you very much. Hopefully, you'll see you around
Thank
soon.
you, my friend.
All right, there he is, Collin Raye, everybody. Back in there.
Thank y'all so much.